All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you're watching and tuning in from. Let us know in the comments. Know where you're tuning in from. We'll give you a shout out. Welcome back. This is Meta Planet Dojo podcast, episode number 3, titled Amplify. We'll know why in a little bit. Hope everybody's having a great day. Team's here. And we sure are having a great day. We're excited to be back in the studio and bring you a lot of things, lots of new developments to go over, lots of new data. The dojo as a community has been busy cooking pretty hard, so we're ready to share. Climb, are you here? How we doing?
I'm alive and well and happy to discuss all this with you again.
Yeah, I know. Glad you have you here, buddy. I know you can't. We can't see you, but I'm just trying to all these introductions. Like, I'm just trying to get you like to maybe bounce and jam a little bit. So let me know, man. Are you jamming on the other side?
Yeah, that was honestly the best intro yet, in my opinion. I love it.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate the feedback. So, couple of changes. We also have Voyager here in the studio with us backstage. He's making sure that everything runs all right, and he'll be providing us with some overlays, some memes, useful links. Voyager, if you're listening to this, show us a sign. Um, we also have there you go. We also have Slothy Sloth moderating the chat, keeping an eye on the crowd. So, behave, or you might see the band hammer, the band ML coming down on you. So, welcome back, episode number 3. Lots of things to go over. We're gonna put a hard cap on this hour and 30 minutes because some of us have commitments. So we'll try and go through all that data. New introduction. You can see us the Meta Planet Dojo fire sign. I'll probably change it later, but I think it's a good lobby, kind of fitting. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into the material. You ready, Climb?
Oh yeah.
All right. Again, episode 3, we had decided not to do weekly episodes so we don't force out material, and we just wanted to wait for enough development so that we have something to talk about, make it worth your listen. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Let me see the comments where everybody's tuning in from. We have Honolulu, El Salvador, Sarasota, Florida, New York City, SoCal, Idaho, Amsterdam, Chicago, Vancouver, Canada, yeah, Southern California, lots of USA people, Austin, awesome, from the moon. Yeah, I guess you Civic 108 went to the moon before us. Wait for us, man. Yeah, Banhammer is on watch. That's right. Okay, anybody from Japan? I don't think so. I think they're still sleeping. It's like 5 a.m. over there. San Luis Obispo, Senor. Okay, great. Thank you for the participation. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Okay. First things first, boring standard disclaimers. This is not financial advice. This podcast is not financial advice. Anything you see and hear on this podcast is financial entertainment. We're having a lot of fun. We're building up models with Climb, and we're interpolating, extrapolating, and we break the models. But it's not financial advice. If you want to be entertained, this is the right place. We have no compensation from Meta Planet. Nobody asked us to do this podcast. It's just two guys, two dudes, and the whole dojo just coming together and doing this, grassroots driven. We don't have any official affiliation with Meta Planet. We do hold a heavy allocation to Meta Planet shares personally. I think a lot of us here do anyways. And there will be no new YouTube monetization. We're not looking for sponsors. All right, boring stuff out of the way. Today's topics, we're going to go through some community updates, updates to the 555 plan, balance sheet. We're going to recap some stuff that that Climb and I think is important to go over. We'll go through talk about some options income stuff, some market metrics, and preferred shares, and then we'll go through some of the stuff that Climb has cooked up for you. So, all right, without further ado, okay. Community updates. The intro art was done by a lot of it was done by Mike, and recently we've had Christoph just step up that game with the Midjourney. So we featured those in Shoraku as well. Give him a shout out below. So thank you for all that art. We kind of go through all the art periodically through the channel to see what people like, and we'd like to feature more of these because it can't always be the same people making art, right? If you like the introduction, I will put the beats in the description later after we close out the live stream. Okay, so stick around. Flash Graph, thank you for your memes. What, Climb, have you watched the Flash memes?
Yeah, they're awesome. I always look forward to them.
Yeah, so he made the memes like with the president being Meta Planet, Key and Peele, and then he made this meme with DBZ over 9,000. It's over 9,000. So yeah, go watch it if you haven't. So everybody, it's a good laugh. Okay. We do have a new role in the dojo called Complaint Enforcer, and we put Theta Tar in charge of it because there's been a lot of not a lot, but there's been some whining a little bit about price action, and so we just have this new department. We do have a tranche bot, courtesy of Botto Master Borg, who is counting the number of times that we say tranche in the entire dojo. We also have an icon for it, Voyager, if you want to show it, And then we have all these statistics as well that it's kind of like an insider thing. We're just having fun, right? Yeah, Exo, Trash. There you go. All right. Next. Okay, as a reminder, we also started recently the Dojo X on X. Makes sense, right? Which is kind of like the outpost of the Discord. Discord is still the headquarters. On X is kind of the Dojo X is kind of our outpost onto the X platform, just for a little added footprint and visibility. So, invite your friends, families, aunts, cousins, uncles, everybody. We'll have more fun. More updates. I want to give a big shout out to the space holders, people holding it down for the spaces. Chris is one of them. Like Chris, if you haven't attended the spaces, he makes he organizes a space almost every day, and I highly recommend. Climb tune in, we tune in. A lot of people tune in. I mean, I think Jury tuned into to one of those spaces, and then Dr. Van there has been helping us co-host those. Yeah, you go. That's Chris. that's Climb. Do you think Chris pounds the X spaces this hard?
Yeah, and I haven't seen that one yet, so that's pretty funny.
It's like every time I see a post in the dojo, it's like he's doing other spaces, and I'm like, oh man, that guy just pounding. But it's good. It's good to join the spaces. I'll tell you why, because it raises awareness, it increases participation, increases like the surface area of all these Bitcoin companies that we're following. I did my first spaces last week, and it was kind of impromptu because Chris couldn't get into his spaces, so I was like, okay, let me just start my own, and then it was really enjoyable, and how to great times just talking to people and debating and bring people up. So yeah, I'll probably do more. But yeah, thank you for the community support. This is really awesome. I highly recommend everybody participate in one. Do you do a lot of these, Climb, or on your own, or participate?
No, I've only done a few. I need to do more. Sometimes it's hard because once a lot of people are on stage, there might be 5 to 10 people, and I don't do well. Usually, I just end up listening if there's like a lot of other people that have the mic. So usually, like one-on-one, I do a lot better, just sharing my thoughts and having a conversation.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I'm usually lurking in there, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Then for reference, Jiri the other day like joined, I think, one of the spaces. So I think it was cool. Here's Jiri. Make sure he's there. Oh, we have a emoji for Jiri too. Okay. All right. Updates to the plan. So we've had a few updates. Obviously, I think everybody here is aware of them. We're sitting at 12, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Bitcoins after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 buy. I'm sorry. There's been 39% more BTC accumulated since episode number 2, which was 2 weeks ago. 54 million shares were exercised by Evo. We'll go over that too. And we're sitting at a total outstanding shares of 654 million, just about, maybe a little bit over that. Anything you wanted to add here, Climb?
Yeah, just that that 54 million is basically, almost exactly 10% of the 555 plan. So, we'll start the rest of the accretive dilution, within the next week or so probably, and see how it goes.
Right. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. Okay. There's been a new. I'll let you talk about this one. Actually, go ahead, man.
Uh, okay, yes. So people have asked about the U.S. subsidiary, and I don't have like a ton of information other than kind of what you see here on this top portion. I'm definitely not an expert in these sorts of things, but people did get a little confused when they announced the 5 billion capital raise, uh, sort of through the subsidiary. Recently, they had before had like a 250 million, and they raised it to 5 billion. I don't know if I said billion, sorry, but 5 billion. And that is highlighted there, and it's just basically saying that that's just rerouting the money that's raised from the warrant exercise, the share sales, to the market in Japan, and that money is going to be rerouted to the Florida subsidiary for purchasing Bitcoin, etc. So, to me, I just simplify it to probably better spreads, probably better, market access, market hours, whatever. So it's a positive. It's not something to like, change the thesis about, but it's a good thing.
Yeah, my thoughts on this are, and obviously we're all speculating because none of us know exactly what's going on. But my thoughts are aligned with yours. I think it's going to be somewhat of a trading desk, around the clock, so they can keep their finger on the trigger and on the pulse here on the west side of the market. Maybe it's easier for them to buy through this than I think they've been executing the Bitcoin buys through QCP Capital based out of Singapore. And I recently this last buy, apparently, if I'm trusting what I saw, like maybe this last buy came from Coinbase, one of the Coinbase Prime wallets. So I don't know if you saw that climb.
Yeah. Somebody had posted like a clip of that on chain, like the 1,234 moved, to or from Coinbase Prime. That was
Yeah,
neat.
yeah, interesting. And the second part of the slide is obviously the 54 million shares. So day one of the plan, Tuesday, June 24th, EVO Metaplanet go hard, exercise 54 a million shares, and they just that's like 10% of the plan. There was a bit of freak out and FUD sentiment going around. We'll address that in the later slide. So there's also the Dojo Discord server, the ticker that's below. If you're not in Dojo Discord, just come and join. We're having a lot of fun in there. Okay. Balance sheet. So I know Bill posts his updates, but like, we keep our own balance sheet internally that we just update with like snapshots in time. But we made a dual language balance sheet. I'm sorry, so that the Japanese base can also keep an eye on it. The one important thing I want to point out is like right before we started the plan, we were at 26% leverage ratio because they had borrowed money from EVO to fund some Bitcoin buys, and then Metaplanet right after that. Day one of the plan, basically through the EVO exercises of the warrants, repaid all that debt. Now they're sitting on $12 million worth of debt, which is nothing, meaning that Bitcoin will have to retrace to less than $1,000 to actually create and stay there for like years to create any kind of harm or pain for them. So no leverage at all. What do you think, Klein?
Yeah, it was funny because there was people that don't know about Metaplanet were like fudding it. Even like there's Bitcoiners that support strategy, Metaplanet, and other companies that are doing similar things, and then a lot of them are like sort of so dogmatic about it, and that's fine. But like it's fine to be dogmatic, but like at least have your facts straight if you're going to critique something. So a lot of the critiques are or were, hey, Metaplanet had like 290 million in debt or whatever recently, but they only established that debt once they already knew that they were going to receive money June 24th based on sales that happened earlier, new share sales. So the money was already guaranteed to them, and then they just front ran the money that they know 100% that they were going to get, and they got another loan and all that. But same as we analyzed, I think in episode 2, they did essentially exactly the same thing. They borrowed beforehand to sort of pull the future forward with their Bitcoin purchases, except last time it wasn't quite as advantageous for them. So they actually waited until day one of the plan and then like pulled the trigger that day once the dilution started. But yeah, this time the dilution was able to start beforehand because of how they set it up. So they were guaranteed that money.
Yeah, it's really cool to see them adapt the strategy, the execution as they go along. Like they may just be fixing a couple, like the order of things, like you said, like the previous times they were actually waiting for the plan to start to borrow money and then pay it back. But now it's like they figured out like how to bridge 2 rounds of the plan and not waste any time. Day one, just go, right?
Yeah, they want to make sure that no matter what happens, like they're good.
Yeah.
They won't get caught with their pants down as far as the debt goes.
Right. Okay, so we'll be providing updates to the balance sheet too, and I'll be posting it regularly on X as well whenever there's significant new movements. But yes, The sheet just shows, you can show this to everybody who says that Metaplanet is a leverage. Oh my God, leverage is so dangerous, and no, there's no leverage. They have no leverage. Everything's paid for. So that's awesome to see. Okay, recap of Climb and I actually want to talk about this again because we thought that last episode it was kind of clear, but we see that there's a lot of there's still some misunderstanding going around. So there's these three companies now, and they have an arrangement between all three of them. So one of them is a public company, Metaplanet, and EVO and 2020 are private ventures. So there's some agreements that the Metaplanet has with these two companies that you will not be privy to because these are just private agreements, right? But to put it back into perspective and so that there's no misunderstanding, Metaplanet sold the warrants. Metaplanet cannot perform an ATM facility like Strategy does in the US and then just go through the banks to finance that. They're not allowed by Japanese law. So they have basically created a synthetic ATM facility by partnering with EVO and 2020. They gave the warrants, they sold the warrants to EVO, and EVO basically takes those warrants and they basically use them to exercise. They short the shares first, and then they use the warrants to exercise and replenish their shares to close out their shorts and collect the spread, give the money back to Metaplanet. 2020 has, they're like the largest shareholder of Metaplanet, and they have a huge war chest that they're sitting on, 30 million shares for 2 years that's just allocated to EVO. That's a straight dedicated lane, no there's no borrow risk for EVO. Like they're not going to get their the borrowed shares like yanked, called in from under them, taken back. There's no fees, from what I understand. So there's, like everything is made to be very low friction so that they can function like an ATM. I would say almost, I think, Climb, you'd agree, almost like an improved version of an ATM as well, with no friction between the three of them.
Yeah, yeah. The huge advantages too that I see are the transparency because with each of these series of stock acquisition rights, once they exercise, like every 10% that they exercise of any of these, they have to disclose that, and so you'll find those disclosures on the metaplanet.jp website. So usually it's like days after, it might be about a week after, depending on how they stagger them, but you'll be able to see the exact day and the exact exercise price. And like I've graphed before, based on the 210 million plan, like sort of how that, like what that really looked like. Before it was them only selling on up days. Now it's a little bit different. It's still only selling into strength, but it's based on a 3-day average. But yeah, we'll talk about that too in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I saw a comment here. I'm going to show it. Why would you pay 0%? Why would you pay 0% debt? They do have a 6 months. They're very short. They're like 6 months or 1 year loan, and I think they're just taking advantage of just paying back as quickly as they can, so it doesn't just linger on their balance sheet. Let me see. Okay, next. Okay, recap of short selling mechanics. We feel like Climb also, we need to drive the point home with that. So when you're shorting a stock, you don't have a share of it. Otherwise, you would have sold the share, right? But that's not shorting. That's just selling. So if you don't own a share of the stock, you need to borrow it. So what you do is like EVO, for example, in this case, will be borrowing a share from 2020 and pay them an interest. But in this case, it may be 0%. They take that share that's borrowed and they sell it on the open market. Now you have short position open. You have an obligation at some point in the future to return that share you borrowed back to your lender, which is 2020. So they sell the share on the open market. They collect that money, and then they can exercise the warrant at a lower strike price, lower than the amount that they sold the share for. They will take that money that they'll get their share, and then they'll take some of the money, give it back to Metaplanet to exercise the warrant, and then they keep a little spread for themselves, and then they will then take that share back and then turn it back to the lender to close the short contract that they have open, the short position. So just a little recap on shorting. We addressed this in detail in episode 2, but I think it's worth summarizing again. Do you want to say anything on this one, Climb, or no?
Yeah, one quick thing too that's interesting is looking back, and I think we talked about this in episode 2 as well, but like looking back at the 210 million plan, which started February 17th, I think, and finished May 19th. Like those were the technical start and end dates. Evo actually didn't even short any shares. They've stockpiled their own, like, around 20 million shares or so, and then they just sell out of their own bucket and then exercise the warrants same day, at a little bit of a lower price. And then that replenishes their shares. So that exercising just replenishes the shares that they have that they sold. And then they just pay Metaplanet the exercise price for each of those shares. And then they can also borrow like they did between plans. They borrowed. We saw that June 9th, 10th, and 11th, where they borrowed almost 30 million shares during those 3 consecutive days and sold those to the market.
Yeah, that was we had a long thread on X about that we had we were kind of cooking and figuring out. And we'll see that in the short. Actually, maybe save that for the shorts report. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, recap of the warrant mechanics. You borrow number one, you borrow the shares from the 2020. You sell them on the open market. You exercise the warrant to net up to buy new shares, and you return the shares to 2020 to close out your short obligation. And you just once you exercise the money went to Metaplanet, that money will be used to buy the Bitcoins. So just repeat the cycle, and you have a synthetic ATM, but in Japan. Okay, this one Climate I really want to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So this is we're going to talk about Evo shorts, and thank you, Benny Big Bags for the graphic. I think this one's awesome. By the way, if anybody's making these Evo shorts, I think I'm in the market. I'll be a taker. What about you, Climb?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So we see a lot on social media, especially on day one of the plan. People were taking social media, maybe some of the less informed investors out there were like, "Oh my God, Evo is shorting. That they're killing the stock and all of that." Well, after everything we just talked about, I think it's pretty clear that they need EVO in there to perform their strategy. Without EVO, then there's no flywheel. There is no cycle, the Bitcoin acquisition cycle to repeat. Um, that's pretty. I think that's pretty standard. So we'll talk about we're going to dissect those. Okay, so Evo. This is a screenshot that Simon posted a few weeks back, and I think the focus was actually for Capital Group number 2, but we're going to talk about the Evo positions that we saw here. They had disclosed that they owned 19 million shares, line number 5, but they were also short 30 million shares. So the max that they could have borrowed from 2020, they shorted all of that. They dunked all of that. I think they started with like a 13 million position, 13 million, 23 million, 26 million, and a few days later upped it up the ante to 30 million. We'll see that. We grafted, so we'll present that with Climb. So we dove into the short positions report, and then Climb is keeping a good log of that, and we actually grafted. He actually grafted for all of you. So I'm going to let Climb talk about this because this is pretty important too.
Yeah, this is all from the I think it's the JPX data. So here's all the different entities. Just a quick detail that it's not super important, but just to say it, for Japanese public companies, anyone has to disclose a short position, or at least these institutions. I don't know how it works with individuals, but at least the institutions have to disclose a short position if they're over 0.2% of the shares outstanding. But you only see that, so they have to report it if it's greater than 0.2%. But then it only gets released as public information on the website you showed a minute ago, like if it's greater than 0.5%. So right now with the float, or with the shares outstanding, let's just call it 600 million. It's a little over that. Basically, if any of these guys have more than 3 million shares short, not only do they have to report, but it's also going to be disclosed. So you can see this is from basically kind of the start of the 210 million plan until now. It just was a pain going back really, really far because it's all daily data and there's just a lot of Excel work hours of it. But this shows, yeah, so until now. And you see the green blob near the very right section of this graph is Evo shorting 30 million shares. Most of that was June 9th, 10th, and 11th, and then like the 16th or 17th, they sold the last bit of it, I think. And then they've already covered that, so they've already closed that short, which was just exercising the warrants and giving 2020 Ventures back their 30 million shares. And you can also see something interesting here that sort of the peaks for most of the time frame here, the overall disclosed shorts, again, which that's not all the shorts because, if somebody wanted to go out and short some, they're not going to have to report it to JPX, and that data is never going to appear in these charts. So, but yeah, 60 million shares was sort of the peak before recently, and the huge spike up to like over 100 million shares was just that temporary borrowing of the 30 million shares, and that got disclosed and reversed or whatever at the end with the exercise. But right now we're sitting at around 80 million shares that we know of that are short. So the shorts have upped their short positions by about 20 million shares, which some people are scared. Some people crawl under the bed and hide when they hear that. I get excited because they have to buy back at some point. I'm also not making bets on short term. I'm not trying to swing this and sell it 2 days later or something like that. So long term view, I don't worry about it. They're potential buyers in the future. And another quick thing is, in the month of June, starting June 9th, there's two or 3 weeks there where less than 3 weeks where Evo sold 54 million shares to the market. So 54 million was pure selling pressure. Locking in some premium and giving us yield, which is what we want, and only it's only selling into strength, but it was a little awkward between the plans because the strike price was set at 1388 yen. So the start of it's a little bit awkward. It's not the same as only selling into strength. I mean, it kind of is, but it's static for a while, so it's sort of awkward to think about. And I sort of lost my train of thought, but yeah, I mean that selling pressure that Evo did never gets bought back. When they exercise the warrants, that's not reversing the selling pressure on the market. That's just producing those shares. But when these institutions and the people that go through them to short these shares, when they short, they have to pay. I think the Interactive Broker rate right now, like if you lend out shares there, you get paid around 8%. On an annual basis, and they break it up daily, of course. But I think that they only give you like half of the rate. So I think the shorting rate, at least on Interactive Brokers, is like 15.5% or so. I know Grain has talked about that in the past, like with different stocks and watching that. I think he actually lends shares out so that he can kind of keep his pulse on what the short rate is, like what that interest rate is. And it could go a lot higher, and I would expect it to, with as brave as some of these shorts are getting. But they will have to buy back at some point. So Evo sells 54 million shares to the market in 2.5 weeks, and that's a lot of selling pressure. And then the shorts have upped their shorts by around 20 million shares.
Yeah, I would like also to point out that so I ran the quick math, but we're about 12% short interest now. I know short usually interest is calculated based on the float, but here we're gonna go on the outstanding. But like we're about 12%, where historically I think we're like a little bit below 10%. So it's I mean it's considerable, and as we can see in terms of absolute numbers, it's just getting a little bit higher every day. So it's definitely attracting attention. And then I wanted to point out that during our research, we saw that there's a new entrant to the shorting game here in town, which is Société Générale, right? The French bank. So on the graph here, you'll see it's like the tiny green blob on the top right. So they're brand new. They haven't showed up on our reports before. So somebody must be using them for their to run their shorts. It's not them shorting, but somebody must be using them to run their short position. So it's just keeping our finger on the pulse of the short interest here. Definitely increasing. So, but it's not all bad.
Yeah, one quick thing too is, people think about the short number and they might get scared, but think about the average price that a lot of these shares were shorted at. Like, I think even Barclays, which is sort of the bottom right slanted line there. Well, actually, I think the next slide is just Barclays, but um, if like I think I mapped it out and their average short price, estimated just based on looking at their daily shorts and sort of basing it off the close price just to kind of keep things simple, uh, is probably in the sort of $9 range. So, if they try to cover where we're at now, like they're underwater right now. Most of these shorts are underwater right now. It would actually be interesting. I wouldn't be able to do it perfectly, so it may not be worth doing because they do some scalp trading as well. But you could kind of run the numbers and sort of see how underwater a lot of these might be, or some sort of a range. But they're some people are scared of shorts, but the shorts overall, I believe, are underwater right now, and they're going to be buying pressure at some point. Even if they buy lower, that's still the covering is still buying pressure. Of course, we'd much rather them pay more than they shorted. So
Yeah. Great. Yeah, so channels like I wonder what would have happened if he actually went through. First of all, if that's his real account on social media, and two, if he'd taken Simon's offer for some borrow to short, 3350. I want.
yeah,
Too bad. This is funny. Okay. This is the same chart, but I think graphed in a different way. But the main point we want to show here with climb is on the top right, on the very right here, that big surge and stiff drop afterwards. That's Evo fund. So you'll notice like they're the only ones, except we'll see in another slide. They're the only ones like just YOLOing, like diving headfirst into shorts position like that. $30 million, 30 million shares, 54 million, and then 30 million short, and then 24 sells. But they do this because they have the warrants to close their shorts. Like it's their job. They have to go and harvest some of the premium to get back to Metaplanet. They're the only players doing this. I think the other institutions are just kind of treading carefully. Um,
I just noticed. I can't remember if I saw this before, but yeah, look at the orange that like kind of halfway through the graph like goes from 0 to like
mhm.
13 million shares or so. And they would have had to. So that's Citigroup Global. It looks like, and they would have had to disclose. They shorted a lot, and it was probably like a huge volume day. I can't remember, but it's funny because that's when a lot of us. That's when the Dojo Discord got in. I got in sometime, but I can't remember when that Friday is that I bought first, and then I kept buying every day after that until I established my position. But between like April 25th and May 2nd, those two lines, that 1 week was when like we were all starting to buy, and Citigroup Global, so they're way underwater because the prices back then, I mean, they've got to be, even if they've been scalping, because the prices back then, $4 was a lot. I remember some people on X were calling it, saying that people were FOMOing in at $2.80. It's like, okay, it went from like 250 to 280, and they were calling that FOMO. It's like, no, that's not FOMO. So, and of course, we've seen that play out now, but yeah, so Citigroup looks like even if they've been scalping some, they are probably way underwater, and they have not increased their position much at all since then. So they're looking forward to them buying back their shares.
I wonder if they're issuing notices to their clients, for whom they're running the shorts, be like, hey guys, margin up or something.
Yeah, I mean they're down maybe as much as 200%. That's not good.
That's not good. Yeah. What do you say? More like wrecked group global. Thank you, Bork. That's a good one.
But yeah, we all know what happened to Citi back in 2008. So
Yeah.
let's see how this plays out.
Yes, sir. Oh yeah. Go ahead and talk about Barclays. You thought it was important enough to warrant a slide of their own. So go ahead.
Yeah, and there's a couple of them that have done this. I mean, the overall shorts have increased over the last few weeks by about 20 million, which is pretty substantial. I mean, especially with the interest rate they're paying, and I mean, their thesis is the very basic. It's going down to one MNAV. That seems to be the general thesis of anyone who's short Metaplanet or Strategy on X is that they want that one MNAV to be realized. But the problem is the one MNAV price keeps climbing. Every time they provide 10% yield, the one MNAV price increases by 10%. And they don't seem to understand that, or they just totally ignore it. So the longer they wait, the higher their risk is. And yeah, Barclays started shorting recently, and they've now hit about 20 million shares short. So like almost 700,000 shares per trading day, I think the math comes out to, that they've added to their position essentially for the last few weeks.
And and let's not forget that to hold these like positions open, like you have to, like, if you have stock lending enabled, you get paid, like you mentioned earlier, you get paid, your percent interest from lending out your 3350 shares. But like these guys have to, they're on the other side, they're borrowing from you, they have to pay all this interest, like what if it's like 15% a year, but annualized, to keep that short open. Like it costs you. It costs you just to keep the short. Even if you go sideways, it cost like it's just they're going in the red every day, even with sideways action, let alone like a rocketing stock like Metaplanet is. So we'll see how that plays out, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Updating. We'll give you some dates. Okay. On day one of the plan, this is really cool because Mr. Shinpei Sensei here, investor relations, right? He's very proactive about engaging the community, whether that's the English speaking community or the Japanese speaking community. Like I saw there was a YouTube video where in Japan, where some of the Japanese commentators, here you go, thank you, Sensei, were not really understanding what Metaplanet was doing or what it was about, and instead of being kind of like dismissing or coming back with some less than ideal comments, like he was very patient and very genuine. He's like, "Hey, can I please get on your show? Let me make a video for you to explain some of these concepts." So he's out there, just doing his thing and really being in touch with the community. And then on day one of the plan, there was all this confusion about the 3-day moving average of the warrant strike. And I made a post on X, and he immediately replied to it, and he's like, "Oh, I made a mistake, and here's the correction." And then he made a correction to the correction. So it's really good to see that how active they are and trying to make sure that everybody understand what's going on. They especially with like the short situation here. So I'll actually go to this slide. So we demystified the warrant a little bit, the 3-day average, and we thought with Climb, we talked about this on Spaces. We thought with Climb it was going to be like a rolling 3-day average, so that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you would calculate the closing prices of these 3 days and then take the average, and that would be your strike for Thursday. And we thought that on Friday, you would now use Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to calculate a new strike for Friday and so forth. So every day, basically, just keep the previous 3 days and keep rolling like that. But it's not like that. So they decided to actually do another method, which we're still kind of analyzing, but it's the 3 days and then wait 3 days and take another 3 days. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that's your strike for Thursday, Friday, Monday. And then on Tuesday, you have a new strike that's been calculated for Thursday, Friday, Monday, and so forth. So it's like a leapfrog kind of moving strike, average moving strike for the warrant. So this one here, he mentioned that the next adjustments will be on July 2nd. So the July 2nd, which is Wednesday here, we'll be looking at Friday 27th, Monday 30th, and Tuesday the 1st. So that's what it will be going for. That's what will be going forward. Did you have anything you wanted to mention here, Clive?
No, I think you cover everything on later slides.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, we'll talk about that in detail. Okay, so here we go. This is like a 4-hour chart of 3350. We all love this. Like 300 yen below here. So these yellow numbers here on the arrows are basically the millions of shares that EVO shorted. So they opened a position with 13 million short, added 9, added 4. That's 26 million. And after that big move up, they unloaded the last clip of 4. We're talking about shorts, like not selling, just short positions. So by that time, they had 30 million shares short. Now, on the green arrow at the bottom here, you'll see that they exercised 54 million shares on the 624. Stock continued to go down. Our current strike right now is 1649 in yellow. So as long as we're below that strike price, EVO has no incentive to be shorting because they would not be able to buy back their position at a favorable price. And then on the green line, we have 1341, which is actually the 10% monthly dilution limit. So if that yellow line here keeps averaging down and falls below that 1341, basically EVO will not be able to short to dilute more than 10% for the month. We would hit a limit, But if we're above that, they can keep doing over 10%. Is that right, Climb?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. Next here. So this is also to demystify kind of what's going on. This is just a progression of the previous slide. But think of EVO if the stock price is in green over there and they short, if they short, then they collect the red spread, the total sales, they collect all that money, right? They'll exercise the warrant strike at the yellow line to exit that short position, give the green part to Metaplanet. So Metaplanet, pockets that green part, and then EVO will keep the yellow part for themselves. So as you can see that they have an advantage when the stock price goes up. They have a favorable environment when the stock price goes up. Like, it doesn't make any sense for them to be shorting below the warrant strike at all. Yeah. Anything you want to?
Yeah. So oh yeah, and you've covered it already, but just to say it like again, so right now it's 1649 yen is the exercise price, and we're as of now we're trading below that. And then that's not going to be updated until Wednesday. So Monday and Tuesday, if the price is below 1649, that means EVO is not selling any shares. So some people are going to be confused and still, anytime price is down, they'll do what they're trained to do from MicroStrategy days, I guess. And anytime the price is red, they'll blame it on new shares being sold to the market. But with Metaplanet, not only do you get transparency pretty soon after with how many shares were sold and on what day, but you also know the line in the sand where if it's below that, they are not gonna crush price when it's down, right? So just look at that 3-day kind of stepping average. And yeah, as long as we're below 1649, we won't get any dilution, Monday and Tuesday.
Yep. So sleep easy, people. Don't worry about EVO shorts. EVO shorts look fine. Oh, this is a funny one. So Chris here, I love this chart. I think Richard used it again in some of his posts, and he mentioned it live on air. But Bitcoin Mindset, took a screenshot of Metaplanet's like a stock chart, price chart, and like that spike down there on the bottom left highlighted is from July 2024, and at the time when the stock price shot up to 200 yen, prices that we'd be killing for today, the MNAV was effectively 20. And you're seeing this today, like if I tell you a stock is 20 MNAV, Bitcoin stock is 20 MNAV, like, oh, it's overvalued, it's rich and everything. But yeah, it did come down in the short term, like that spread got closed. But look where we are now, So I think your lesson, Climb, here is like don't take MNAV as a static measure in a vacuum, right?
Yeah, and also like, these guys don't have the benefit of hindsight and say, oh, it went from 20 MNAV down to 5 or whatever it went to at the time. A lot of them, their whole thesis is that it's going to go down to 1. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't cover on the way down, but a lot of them, and also it's not like they all would have shorted perfectly at 20, even if they wanted to short. So they probably shorted when it was 5 because they thought it should have been 1, and then at 6 because they thought it should have been 1, right? So they're averaging their shorts up the whole way. and maybe they covered some when it went down. But if they're waiting for 1 or 2 MNAV, it never happened. Not to say we'll never see those in the future, but I don't. The whole point of this is that now we are much higher prices, tremendously higher prices than when we were at 20 MNAV last year, and we're trading at a much more conservative MNAV. Still, a lot of people seem to think that we're at 7 MNAV, and we're not. If you go, instead of asking people, just go to the metaplanet.jp website, click on analytics. I think it might just bring you there, but click on analytics and then scroll down, and you'll see it off to the right somewhere, the MNAV. So I think right now it's like 5.1, and then they've already announced, the 54 million share dilution that happened recently. So that sort of a dilution friction in Bitcoin per share has already been announced. And then Monday, we'll see, maybe they'll announce, 1,000 or so, probably something around 1,000 based on how much we know that they have, 1,000 Bitcoin purchase. And then that would go purely to Bitcoin per share because the share part has already been baked in since it was already announced. So yeah, we might be at like 4.8 or something in reality.
Yeah,
right
4.8, and then this concept of MNAV is so interesting because everybody who has a short thesis, I think, gets hung up. That's the thing they get hung up on. Not necessarily the number of Bitcoin HODL on the balance sheet. It's the premium, right? Like everybody focuses on the premium, and usually in a static fashion, like the screenshot of MNAV today, it's like 20. Oh no, it should be 1, so I'm going to short. And we're not saying with Climb that the MNAV isn't going to go down over time, but for that to happen, it'd have to be a much bigger company and with a much smaller yield. So all these you know new Bitcoin treasury companies coming up, like with small balance sheets, like you gotta be careful, like when you make a thesis like this, because they have a lot of leeway and a lot of movement that's possible, and so it's just just yeah, just put in context. I think it's not fair to just use it as a static measure, and they should always close or go down to 1.
Yeah, when we started buying late April, it was $2, $3, $4, whatever. But at the time, if it had gone up to $10, that would have been like a 10 or 11 MNAV. Like it was almost like the dollar price was the MNAV. Like there is just the way that the math worked out for a little while. It was kind of funny. But yeah, if it had gone to 10, it probably would have been 11 MNAV. And now we look at $10 per share. And after hopefully the Monday buy that we see shortly, will be under 5 MNAV for a $10 price equivalent. Regardless of what price we're trading at, that would be the equivalent. So it's pretty funny.
And then I'm sure that if we were talking about the meme with that flash graph I've made, like if it ever went to 47 MNAV, like I think this would be like all of our faces, and Dylan's too. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll let you talk about that, dude.
Yeah. So we also, I think, late April, like Metaplanet was probably number 11 or something on this list with 5,000 Bitcoin on the public company Bitcoin Treasury ranking list. And this is from bitcointreasuries.net. I just put it in Excel and made it a little prettier, but we jumped from I can't have we made a double jump yet? I can't remember now.
Not yet.
Okay. But so CleanSpark and Galaxy Digital. So yeah, now we're number 7. So we took out like Block, Coinbase, and Tesla, I think were the 3. And then now we're number 7. And from hearing Sailor talk, in my opinion, like hearing Sailor talk and just running the numbers yourself, looking at the history, trajectory, opportunity in Japan, like slice it a million different ways, and you end up with Metaplanet very likely to be number 2 on this list. It's just a matter of time, whether it happens kind of this year, next year, whatever. Yeah. Yep. And so right now, CleanSpark is number 6, Galaxy is number 5, and they're so close to each other in the mid to high 12,000 Bitcoin range that they might slice and dice it Monday and just do like a partial buy and be number 6. But I think it's more likely that they'll just jump both of them together and be number 5.
Yeah, I actually I actually have that meme ready, so I'm going to show everybody what it's going to look like on the next slide. You okay with that, Climb? Yeah.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
here's what it looks like. Oh, damn. No, it's still blurred. Sorry. We'll have to wait till the release is actually official, right?
Yep, definitely.
Uh,
But it's funny. It's funny too, because like we were talking about number five, and you know, a lot of people are thinking that there's no way that we'd hit number five before July, and it's not set in stone yet, you know. But they don't have to buy much Bitcoin for to hit number five, and Monday is still in June.
yeah, we
So
still well in a few hours, right? We may see this today, right? Today in the U.S., tomorrow in Japan. Yeah,
that's
well,
right.
today in
Yeah.
Japan too. So we'll see. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Chris. That's funny. Okay. I will let you talk about that, the shareholder meeting.
Yeah, so you know, there's speculation. I've been speculating. Other people have been speculating about what the shareholder meeting is for. They'll almost certainly the sort of no brainer is that they'll increase the max share count that they can get, not their fully diluted shares. Like they can't do that with a shareholder meeting, but their sort of limit of what they can go up to with like the 555 plan and stuff like that. So they have to first raise the cap and then release things like the 555 plan that work under that umbrella, essentially. So in Japan, they're only allowed to get shareholder approval to at any given time to a maximum of four times their share count. Uh, so if they had 1 billion shares, they could get shareholder approval to be able to work up to eventually having 4 billion shares. But then if they had 3.5 billion shares, they'd probably want another meeting, you know, so that they could increase that again if they're doing an accretive dilution strategy like Metaplanet is. So at the end of the 555 plan, will be most of the way through. They're sort of like I forget what it's at, like a 1.6 billion, I think is the technical cap right now.
Yes, I think it was it 1.2, 1.16 or 1.6. I forgot. Somebody let us know.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
1.6. Yeah, it's 1.6 something. And then like after this plan, it'll be like I think they'll be at like 1.3 billion shares. So uh, that's like a no-brainer that they'll expand that just so that they are able to issue more plans after the 555 plan. And this is September 1st meeting, which you know we just found out about fairly recently, which is really exciting because a lot of people are thinking, well, they'll just do that in the meeting next March. But then we started extrapolating and thinking how quickly they could be done with this plan. Uh, and a decent chance, you know, no guarantees, but a decent chance that they'll be done this year. Um, you know, the very later part of this year. But we've also started speculating that they may um, seek approval to issue future preferred shares, you know, something like a perpetual preferred shares. Okay, so yeah, 1.61 billion shares. And that's just the highlighted part at the bottom. The agenda items, date and time, location of this extraordinary general meeting will be announced once determined. And we know that the record date is Monday, which is, yeah, like you said, coming up in a few hours.
Yeah.
So I imagine that sometime after that, they'll let everyone know. But to me, it's like a 75% in my head, 75% chance they'll announce that they'll want to do a vote on preferreds in this meeting, and a 25% chance that they wait until March. But I see it as very, very, very likely that it's one of the two, and it's not a huge deal either way. I would just be excited if they did
Yeah,
it sooner.
that would be quite interesting if they announced it so early in the, so soon, like 1 year into the treasury strategy, right? 1 year and a half, year and a half.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's icing on the cake, and none of my models take that into account.
Yep. All your models will be broken, we hope, right?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, go ahead. I think you had a few things you wanted to say about these accounts and people.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot more. Just as far as people that a lot of us, probably a lot of people listening now, probably follow most or all of these three guys on X, and I know Dan Hillary. With all the Metaplanet research that I've been doing, I just haven't made a whole lot of time to watch like True North and stuff very much. But Dan did put out. I've tried to more recently, as now the thesis is pretty well established, and it's just waiting for like a little bit more information to trickle out, you know, as the days go by. Um, but yeah, Dan had a pretty good 10 or 15-minute video like a day or two ago about preferreds. And then he also posted and buying more Metaplanet, words I never thought I'd say, after seeing Dylan's post. So, I don't know how much everyone's in, and that's their business. But I know that Ragnar has like doubled as of the last few days. He's doubled his Metaplanet position. I think he was around 400,000 or 500,000 shares, and now he's at 888, which is really cool. And Michael Sullivan as well is an author. People should check him out. But he's also has quite a following and posts a lot about Bitcoin and strategy and Metaplanet and other things. And I know he's bullish, and quite a few other people are too. But it's really neat, and we talk about it a lot. But there's a lot of people that it's so much easier for people who are already familiar with strategy, have already been investors in strategy, to learn about and understand Metaplanet versus Voyager's trying to make me laugh. That's funny, but
versus somebody who's not like in the Bitcoin space yet, but trying to hop into Metaplanet, right?
exactly. Yeah, most people like buying strategy for the first time. It's like, well, I could have like Bitcoin or the Bitcoin ETFs, or I could have strategy. And like, what is this MNF thing? And what's this yield thing that you guys are talking about? They're not paying me yield. Like people don't understand a lot of the terminology because it's a little confusing or whatever. It definitely takes a while to think through all this stuff. Our job is never done there. Like we're always trying to think about it better. But yeah, for people who have already come into strategy, it's just so much easier to understand something like Metaplanet. And like some of these guys will point out that it's really like rewinding time and saying, could you invest in, would you want to invest in strategy in 2020 when they first bought Bitcoin? And the obvious answer is yes, because we all know what happened. And that happened, that all unfolded without the market properly appreciating strategy and without Quant Bros Quant Bros just let everything, like they shared everything and really established a lot of the terminology, a lot of the viewpoints. And that doesn't mean we all have to agree on all this stuff, but Metaplanet is strategy's little brother, and it's growing up every day. And now they're in the 5 figures of Bitcoin, and they'll be in the 6 figures perhaps by the end of this plan. So we'll see.
To add to this slide here, so that Dylan post that you see quoted on here is very important. I think everybody should go and read it. But he basically was making the point of, and Dylan loves to talk about futures. Basically, when you run the basis trade, is you long the underlying, but then you short the futures because the futures will be trading at a premium. The futures is the underlying, but trading at a future price at a premium, right? So if you short the future and you long the underlying, you're pocketing that spread. So you can do a basis trade on bonds, like if you're longing something at 1 but selling the future, shorting the future for 1.2, then you're pocketing that 0.2 difference here. And he had that idea back in 2021. It's like, why is nobody running this trade, on Bitcoin? Why is nobody just longing Bitcoin and then shorting the futures? Because the futures get paid. The shorters get paid when you short futures. And he's like, and capture that difference in CAGR, in Bitcoin CAGR. Why is nobody doing this? And then he's like, and he was thinking that all these big firms are gonna start doing it, but it turns out it's not so easy because not everybody can, in their mandate, can sign up for like a Coinbase account or Binance or what have you, and then just go smash buy Bitcoin and short the perpetual on the other end. And because we're Bitcoiners, and he was, he saw that, he's like, that ARB is gonna be closed soon. It turns out that no, it's not closed, and it didn't happen until Strategy launched the preferred. We're talking like 4 years later. When March, February 2025 was when these prefers came online, and now you're actively capturing that spread between the Bitcoin growth and that low debt that you're taking on, like for the prefers, like the dividends, and you're doing that on the open market with an instrument that's openly tradable, publicly tradable, right? So,
yeah, and that's before these products even have like really nice credit ratings and really nice I think Vince, didn't you show me like the was it the first payout that just happened like yesterday? Because they're quarterly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I got paid.
Or
I got
today?
paid. It says on my broker really like
Or
6:30. The payout for the strike and
that's
my
right.
STRF, but I think the date of record was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and then I just got paid like today. So I think it's very exciting. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Klein, but I don't think you. I think the prefers is like very recent. The kind of like realization for you, right? How good they could be.
Yeah, I guess kind of like high volume, there's a point where I considered high volume just very boring and like, why do you need, you can just look at price action. Why would you ever care about volume? Like, what is that even, who cares if 10 people are trading it or 10 million? But, then you look at how the market responds to something like high volume and you see, wow, like if volume is way higher than the market, like relative to the market cap than a lot of other stocks, then that's really like the market shouting, we believe this market cap should be a lot bigger to kind of fit us all in because there's just way too much activity, and there's a lot of stuff that just trades like memes and only has perked up volume for a few weeks or a month or something like that. But Metaplanet has had very strong volume, especially for like the last 8 months or so. When it was pretty obvious they were going to be the best stock in Japan last year, I think around October they started their volume went crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, that's very exciting. Let's move on. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. So we just showed some social media public proof of smash tranche, and Chris here, Bitcoin Mindset. But by the way, if you guys aren't following Bitcoin Mindset, you all need to. But he's been keeping tabs on Capital Group for a long, 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 long time. Here, yeah, that's Bitcoin Mindset right there. So Capital Group, for those of you, and then let me go through these screenshots first. So the top one is Metaplanet's top shareholders, and the bottom one is Strategy's top shareholders. So you can see that on the top screenshot, Capital Group owned back in on January 9th, so pre-split of Metaplanet, they own like 2 million shares. So, and then for Strategy, which at the time was like it was 5% of the outstanding. On Strategy, they already own like 8% of Strategy. Let me actually go to the next screenshot and show you how the progression. So now fast forward to June 20th, Simon posted the screenshot and he's obviously trying to point something out. Capital Group now upped their position to 36 million shares. So from 2 million pre-split, so 20 million really to 36 million. Now they own 6% of the company, after that round of dilution that happened in February. So why is he showing this? Like Capital Group, they are an asset manager. They've been around for a century, like 93 years. They have $3 trillion of assets under management. They're international. They're private, so you're not buying their ticker or anything. But they move in silence. So they were early, as Chris points to the top left here. Like they were early on Amazon, Tesla, Nvidia. They bought a huge share portion of MicroStrategy. Now they're doing the same thing for Metaplanet. Like they've only increased their position. I guess the point we're trying to make with Climbing Chris here is like, watch them move. These guys have been around for a century and they're growing stronger. They are like the Assassin's Creed of investors. Like they just move in the shadows. They don't go on social media and announce like big buys or advertise their positions publicly. I mean, you can find them if you dig for them, but they move in the shadows, and they have a history of doing that for a whole century. Like, why do you think they're buying 5% of 6% of Metaplanet and like 8% of Strategy? Yeah. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, who's more likely to win? Bears, what's the saying about like bears sound smart, but bulls make money? And guys like this, they quietly execute. They quietly build their positions and execute. And they're high conviction, longer term focused traders that have been around 100 years. And then you have people that short based on MNAV, and the brain power in both of those two categories is not
Yeah.
equivalent.
So yeah, it's just keep an eye. I mean, I think we say with Chris is like, if you can just copy trade Capital Group, copy invest Capital Group, I think you do well. Like you'll be a little bit behind, after the disclosure and everything, but you do okay. All right, I'll let you talk about this, man, because I know we had some developments here, some new thoughts, like that came to mind about the options.
Yeah, there's so exactly. So talking about preferreds, this conversation sort of started with talking about preferreds and all the ways that it's better in Japan, and that's why. And you'll see later we have a clip with Sailor saying this, but that's why Sailor wants to get into the Japanese market because he wouldn't have to offer quite as high yield on preferred products as he does in the U.S. In the U.S. it might be 8 or 10% or something like that. In Japan, you could probably do 3 or 5%, and if you wanted huge demand, up it to 5.55, like some people have suggested. That would be actually really cool if they did that. So uh, one of the things, so it's not just the payout would be maybe half of what it is in the U.S., which is really important. It means you could issue twice the relative number of preferreds with the same yield payout essentially. So that's super, super important. But the other thing is, how do you pay for it? And I think strategy right now, and they may do something else in the future. Right now, I think they just issue either new preferred shares to pay the preferreds, or they issue common shares to pay for the preferreds. So they sell shares to pay for the preferreds, um, and it still works. It still works very well. It still maths out. My personal preference is to have an income strategy like Metaplanet has. So it's interesting that the Metaplanet already has everything essentially set up. They're in the perfect country for preferreds as far as the yield starved nature, and yeah, the ability to do that. There's only 4 other preferreds on the market in Japan right now, and they're all, I think, around like the 1, 2, maybe low 3%. But yeah, the ability to pay for those yields with Metaplanet's Bitcoin option strategy. So if you don't really know what options are, it's kind of hard for me to go through it right now. But basically, they're selling premium uh, on they're profiting off of the volatility of Bitcoin with a very small percentage, maybe 5% of the cash raised. So look at their net asset value, and for me, I just estimate that 5% of that is sort of unknown to us. It's just in cash, and it's constantly making money. But they started making money Q4, so Q4 and Q1 they started making money with their Bitcoin option strategy, and they have that set up. So then the question, and what Sid posted about here is, some people are like, okay, yeah, so Metaplanet could issue preferreds and pay some or all of the yield based on just their options income. But why doesn't, if it's so good, why doesn't Strategy or another company like this do it? And he pointed out the reason why, pause and read through it, but subject to the Investment Company Act rules in the US. So I think if Strategy did it, they would have to, like, they wouldn't be like an operating company or something like that anymore, I believe is what he says.
Yeah.
They would have to totally change like what they are. So they basically can't do it essentially unless they just wanted to totally change what they are. And I think then they wouldn't even be able to be in index inclusion and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if he says that here or if he was saying that on Discord, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not going
Yeah.
to
It's
happen.
so when we first did the first episode of Planet Dojo podcast, we actually were talking. So go back to that episode if you guys want to learn more about the options, the put income strategy that Metaplanet is executing. I firmly recommend giving that episode one a go back. The We were talking about how innovative it was, how cool it was, and how their execution. And we're like, why doesn't everybody do this? Like, if you're gonna buy Bitcoin anyways, like, why doesn't everybody do this? And then on social media, I saw all these posts like coming up, like, why doesn't a Bitcoin treasury company execute a put option income strategy as almost as a primary business too, or employ some options traders. So there's your answer, which said, thank you for that clarification. He runs a hedge fund. He runs a fund himself, so he's in the weeds there. He knows, and there's regulatory requirements. So that ends up giving Metaplanet maybe like like a little moat. So they have their moat in Japan, obviously, due to their size, speed of execution, and track record. But they may also be the one of the, if not the only company that's able to execute a put options income strategy, and that's their primary income right now. Like Strategy can't do it. The US companies probably can't do it. Maybe in Europe, I don't know, but that could be another moat that they have, right, Climb?
Yeah, and the money they leave in cash to make this income through the put option strategy on Bitcoin, selling volatility on Bitcoin. That amount of money could be much smaller than the amount they issue in preferreds. It could be like they issue a billion in preferreds and only need like 1 to 200 million of cash that's collecting maybe 20%, maybe 30%, maybe not even that much, um, per year, constantly selling Bitcoin volatility in order to pay the preferreds. So, because some people are like, well, why would they have cash and not just buy Bitcoin with it, immediately? And the reason is once you have preferreds, and I think that so thinking back at all this right now, it's like, wow, they could have just bought Bitcoin instead of doing the option strategy. We're not saying the option strategy is better than just buying Bitcoin by itself. If Bitcoin goes up 30% a year and they can make 30% in cash with an option strategy, then it's equivalent, at best, let's say. But the key is with preferreds, I think that they've been doing this to prep their income strategy to make sure it works, to show the market that it works. And then once they issue preferreds, they can issue way more than the amount of cash that they need to generate the income to pay for the preferreds. Once they issue $1 billion of preferreds, they get to buy $1 billion of Bitcoin. They may only need 1 or 200 million or something like that of cash on the side that's selling Bitcoin volatility with this option strategy in order to buy $1 billion of Bitcoin today. So it's leverage that, it goes back to torque and everything that Michael Saylor says, but it works even better in Japan because of the put option strategy that they're doing and the lower interest rates and the yield starve. Like, everyone wants yield
Yeah,
over there.
they wouldn't even, so the preferreds that we're doing here, that Strategy's executing here in the States, like effective, the nominal face value yield is like $8 per share for Strike, and then we have $10 per share for Strife and Stride. But in Japan, you don't even need to go that high to please the investors, right? Because they're so starved over there.
Yeah, they might not even want to go too high because, like, if they offer like 5 or 6, like if they offered 6%, they could totally do that and make a ton of money, and probably get a lot of demand. But they might get so many people scratching their head, like, why? They might think that something's wrong with it. Like, what is this junk, or what's going on here? So I think they'll come out with a decent but respectable rate, higher than the other 4 preferred options in Japan, but probably not crazy high because, like, people need to not think that this is ridiculous. And if they just offer twice as much as everyone else, it might take longer for the market to really trust it. So it's kind of weird, but psychologically, I think a 4 or 5 or maybe 5.5 at the very most would be pretty smart for them to do.
Oh, this is funny. So Metaplanet, how are you going to live off options yield? Where does the yield come from? Yeah. Well, no options,
Yeah, it's
no
funny.
options on Metaplanet now, but you know, Metaplanet can do options on Bitcoin. So that's interesting. So I wonder actually if also the options will be, or maybe not actually. They probably won't be routed through the U.S. subsidiary after what we just talked about, huh?
I think that they would probably. I don't know enough about it, but I would imagine. They're still a Japanese company, no matter what they do in the U.S. So I wouldn't be surprised if they could do that, and I hope that they are able
Yeah.
to move their option strategy to the U.S. because I'm sure they would get better spreads. There's just more liquidity.
Yeah. Right now, I think they're executing that through QCP Capital, which is an exchange based out of Singapore. And if anything, if Coinbase Prime is the last buy or something, I wonder if there's something going on there, and yeah, options maybe coming to the US. Maybe our compliant DGen regulatory expert can shed some light on that. So we'll see. Okay. This is a quote by Chris Mindset. that sailor said, Simon, you'll probably beat me to issue preferred stock in the Japanese market. So I think sailor said that. That sailor. And shall we watch a video that we want to share? Yeah, everybody, we're gonna mute ourselves, but just stay in. We're gonna watch a little quick clip.
And they're all going to have local advantages because they're, if you're a Japanese company, it's easier to issue Japanese securities than an American company going to Japan. I know this. I called Simon. I said, Simon, the good news is you'll probably beat me to issue preferred stock in the Japanese market. Go for it.
Well, okay. Yeah,
you're
sorry.
muted.
Okay, so that's our statement by Sailor himself, saying that he's, Metaplanet probably will be beating strategy to that strategy of issuing preferreds in Japan. So, yeah, prefers with a BTC rating of 110x. Yeah, because they have no debt on the balance sheet. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, they have no debt, so it's just a matter of whatever ratio. I don't know much about the laws there, but whatever the ratio is that they do, whether it's that they issue a third of the size of their net asset value, however that is, but it's really 3 buckets. They sell preferreds, that increases their net asset value because they immediately take that money and buy more Bitcoin, which then allows them to issue slightly more preferreds, let's say, and then they put some of that money in their income strategy. And so those 3 buckets, just balancing their income versus their preferreds versus their net asset value, all those things can grow together. And then, the ability for them to still sell some shares at MNAV premium to increase their net asset value. And even if they don't do that, just waiting and letting the net asset value increase in value as Bitcoin price goes up. So there's so many different sort of interesting parts to this to think about.
Very exciting. Let's keep going. So this is the outlook that we were talking about. Well, let us move us out of the way. Yeah, you collected this data. Would you like to comment on that, Klein?
Yeah. So, I'm definitely not. Again, I'm definitely not. Neither of us are experts on the Japanese market. But just doing some research and asking some people that would know to kind of make sure that it is ballpark correct. The total addressable market in Japan for preferred product, the retail investors, looks like they have around $13 trillion dollars in like investment savings, essentially. They save a lot more than like the US. We tend to live paycheck to paycheck over here, and I think they don't enjoy doing that nearly as much over in Japan. They're a lot smarter about that, but a lot of people in the US, if you get fired, then you're kind of screwed, but immediately. But let's see. So elsewhere, it's not on here, but I think roughly half of the retail investors' investments are in cash or cash equivalent products. So there's let's just call it $5 or $6 trillion from Japanese retail investors that are looking for yield. That are in cash, like they're not in stocks, they're in cash or cash equivalents. And the Japanese like Fed funds rate is 0.5% right now. And I don't even know if they have like an equivalent money market over there where they can even earn that, or if they just kind of earn zero. I'm not sure exactly, but either way, it's not much. So, the question is, what percentage of that money would be interested in a product that could give them 3 or 4 or 5%? Probably a lot. I imagine the preferred offerings now probably have limited. They're probably not just selling as much as people want. They probably want to limit their obligation. Their operating companies, and they want to limit their obligation to pay that yield. So they probably only sell or issue new shares of preferreds every once in a while as they need money in special situations. I would assume. I'm not sure, but with the 3 buckets, like the net asset value, the income strategy, and the preferred bucket, the way that Metaplanet can run this in the future is super interesting because they're always going to want to sell more preferreds. You know, they might have to wait till Bitcoin goes up a little bit and appreciates to fix the ratio of assets versus sort of liabilities of some form. But it's going to be something that they're always interested to sell more of, and they already have a huge amount of net asset. You know, we're already way over $1 billion now in net asset value, about to be a lot more, especially after this 555 plan. So we could be 5 billion this year pretty easily. We could hit 10 billion of net asset value this year pretty easily, which is higher than Metaplanet's current market cap. It's sort of funny to think about it that way too. But there's enough total addressable market and not a whole lot of competition, and it's in the perfect country to do it. And Metaplanet wants to do it at scale, where their competition probably doesn't have interest in doing that. They sort of cut it off at a certain point. So many stars, like so many things that are aligned here, and all of it to me points to one pretty obvious outcome, and that's that Metaplanet becomes the largest Japanese company.
Mic drop. That's it. That's it.
It's just a number of years, like, is it going to happen in 2 years or 5 years? I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you, Voyager. Yeah, it's like it's the same thing they're running. I mean, they're running the strategy playbook. They are very much disciples of Saylor. Saylor strategy paved the way when there was no way. They paved the way and all rolled with the punches and all that. So yeah, they're executing at breakneck speed right now, but applying every single piece of teaching and execution from the Big Brother. And as long as they stick to the plan, their chances of success are greater than failure. So I don't see, biggest company in Japan. Yep, I agree. They could be that, and that's gonna be like Japanese bewilderment too, huh?
Yeah, and I think the largest company in Japan might be around the 300 billion point, about a tenth of what it is in the US. So it's not, quite the challenge that the strategy has in the US. I actually think Metaplanet will probably hit number one before strategy does in their equivalent countries. I think strategy's market cap stays higher than Metaplanet's, perhaps forever. Who knows? But we'll see.
Okay, let's keep going. So this is just a direct continuation of what we were talking about. Go ahead, Klein.
Yes. So, yeah, this is just more sort of, and this to me personally feeds into the speculation that they may announce it in September. Of course, I don't know if they're allowed to. They may have to, like, I don't know if they get the shareholder vote first and then like sort of go through to get like the final levels of approval, which could take a couple of months, or if it goes in the reverse order. I would kind of assume that they do the shareholder part first, but they may not. So maybe someone can dig into that. But Simon, Shinpei, and Dylan have all like it's hard to go. They're not going a week without posting about yield or about preferreds or alluding to it. And every time Simon talks, like on stage or on a podcast or whatever, he pretty much always mentions the preferred sort of end game, and that's a large part of the next level. And I think they'll kind of skip over the whole convertible bond market. He's talked about why, like in the Byworth interview. That's one that everyone needs to see if they haven't seen it. It's really, really good. And then Dylan's post. I mean, that show more button that you see there for his post, like it's a long post. So grab some coffee and read it. It's worth a read. Like I need to read it a few more times to make sure I really grasp it. But yeah, they're shouting this from the hilltops and letting the market know, like, we are going to have preferreds. And whether they can technically do it in September or whether they wait until March isn't a huge part of my thesis or anything. It's all icing on the cake. Obviously, I would prefer them to do it sooner. Little pun there, but yeah. So we'll see. But they've all been very very together on this message that preferreds is the next real thing to conquer.
Yep. Yeah, they've signaled it enough times through the last few weeks, so I think it's looking good. This is just a quick recap of the volume. We get asked questions all the time, like how fast is Metaplanet going to be able to run through the 555 plan? Our our models show like pretty fast because they have this insane volume coming through. I mean, it's a little stock. You're talking about a market cap of, at the time this was made, it was barely $5 billion market cap, but they're like trading. Their turnover rate, we'll see in later slides, is like astronomical. It's like tenfold above like the Max 7 companies, and they're just trading that kind of volume every day. So why is that important? As Climb always mentions, volume. He loves volume. Volume and turnover will dictate how fast you're going to be able to run through a plan. Because if you're just a tiny stock with low volume, then yeah, you could dilute like 50% more shares into the market, but it's going to take you forever. It's going to take you like years. And with high volume, high turnover, then you can execute that in maybe, but you can decrease that by half, maybe even just down to a few months. So I'm not going to go over the details on this, but there's a better slide that I want to show you. This is the same, just continuation of volume. It's one of Japan's most liquid stocks, just as a reminder, guys, in case you guys forgot. And then, in June, it was not enough data when this slide was made. So, but yeah, it's just rising volume every day, every day, every month now look at April 2024 on the very left here, when they first announced the BTC strategy. There was like nothing, and now we have monthly trading volume. Like May was like over $6 billion. That's insane. That's a whole market cap. Okay, so this is a slide here. So we're gonna keep an eye on these going forward, and that's just the turnover. So the turnover, for those of you who don't know, are basically daily volume over the shares outstanding. So basically, as a function of shares outstanding, how much volume of shares is moving every day, being bought, sold on the market, right? And Metaplanet is just crazy because we're like, if you look, we're like, right now we've come down a little bit from the highs, but our floor seems to be like 5%. Like on any given day, we're gonna have a turnover of 5%. And that's the floor. So there's days, obviously, when we had that mini squeeze, whatever you want to call it, in May, like we skyrocketed to like 25%, right? So you're like rotating 25% of your shares outstanding in one trading day. Comparison. I don't have the slides, but we looked this up with Climb before going on air. Max 7 stocks. Out of the Max 7 stocks, Tesla is the most that has the highest turnover at 3%, 3.8%. Right, over the last I looked over the last like 12 months. Google, Apple, Microsoft, all of these like mammoth, like giants, like they have 0.5%, 0.6% turnover, daily turnover. Strategy was decent. Like lately, they've been a bit more muted, but like lately they're hovering around like 3%, so up there with Tesla. But we just wanted to highlight to you that the high turnover is good, and it's going to decrease as the stock price increases. Their turnover rate will decrease because not everybody's able to afford a higher stock price and day trade that. But it will decrease. We expect that to decrease. But for now, it's like it's one freaking little guy, but competing in the big boy court in terms of volume, right? Right, Climb? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, they're sort of a rough number to throw at it. They're trading with the dollar denominated, or let's say like yen denominated, the total daily volume. They're trading like a company, let's say 20 times their size in Japan. So they're often up, and you'll see Simon and others post like the volume charts at the end of the day sometimes. But yeah, they're trading with the big boys. They're trading in the top 10 very, very frequently. There's always some lower volume days, like the days there where you see it basically at 0%. The stock was at a limit, so like no shares could trade. It was at an up limit. So quirky things like that, of course, will happen with the volume numbers if you're looking at them. But yeah, the volume is partly a sign of inflows, but partly just a sign of attention. And the market cap is still so small that amount of attention can grow significantly from here. We're still under 10 billion market cap. And there's days where we're trading close to $1 billion worth, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. So we'll keep an eye on this metric going forward, guys. So, I will let you talk about your beautiful models, your slides.
Yeah, Vince. Actually, today Vince talked me into kind of checking out a different format for the models instead of having them white. I still haven't gotten used to like dark mode and stuff on my phone, so people still make fun of me for that. But so I sort of, and this is a bit of a nod to how Metaplanet did their own slides, like how they tend to do their own slides. We're not going to copy everything, but just kind of neat to at least play around with this and see how people like it. But yeah, so Metaplanet's Bitcoin holdings and sort of a few of the next slides like show their growth, relative to themselves, just how much Bitcoin they have. This is their Bitcoin holdings. The y-axis is a base 2 log chart, or kind of base 4 the way it breaks it down there. But yeah, so these all show how they're climbing against everyone that's sort of equal or greater size than them. Thank God for dark mode. Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, they started the year with 1,700 Bitcoin. I mean, we're not too far from being at a 10x of their January 1st, 2025 Bitcoin, and we're only 6 months in. And I think things are about to accelerate. So if anything, I would expect this white line to deviate from the blue line over the next, let's say, 2 or 3 months. I would expect us to be higher than that. It doesn't need to happen. If they stick with that exponential growth, that's fantastic. I just sort of am anticipating it happening sooner. But if you stretch it out over time, you really end up sort of, generally speaking, with the same result. But yeah, it's a rush. Buy as much Bitcoin before the world figures it out. Michael Saylor started the race, and Metaplanet is going to be number 2, I believe.
Very soon. Yes, that's very true. I love that one. No, you're right. Yeah, so I love this chart, man. Every time you update it, it's really good. Looks really good in dark mode too. I agree with the public there. Dark mode.
Cool. I'll try to post these because they may not be that clear on video. I'm not sure, but I'll try to post them on
It's
X
like the
later, too.
Mona Lisa for dark mode. Oh wow! Thank you, thank you, folks. Thank you, Microbullet. Go ahead, dude.
Okay, so here's the thing that I really care about is Bitcoin per share, because imagine a stock like this is trading at 1 MNAV and they're able to dilute shares at 1 MNAV and buy more Bitcoin. Like they're getting more Bitcoin, so they may still end up showing that they're growing their stack considerably, but somebody that owns 1 share doesn't like have any more Bitcoin associated with that share, right? So a Bitcoin per share basis, you're not growing at all. It's just pure 100% friction, with zero growth, zero movement. So, but with Metaplanet, they've historically had a very strong MNAV. And, we're getting kind of spoiled around 5 or 6 MNAV, but really anything. People have asked me recently, like, what if they drop to a 4 MNAV? It's like, well, look at history. There's plenty of times when they dilute around a 3.5 MNAV, whatever, and we end up with these results. It's all part of the history. It's all part of the chart. So, yeah, so 77.9 days. I think in it might have been in Vegas or it might have been before then, but Simon was on stage and shared a chart that looked very much like this, but it was like every 92 days they double their Bitcoin per share. I graphed it out. There's more history now. They've bought some more Bitcoin since then, certainly. And I think the actual number might be at like 84 or 82 if you count it from like day 1. But as you see, like this trend line is a best fit, and so it starts at like a lower value all the way to the left than the white line does, which accounts for the difference. So, but the trend line is what they're sticking to. And honestly, since like for all of 2025, the white line has actually been steeper than the blue trend line. So we've actually been growing all of 2025. We've been doubling the Bitcoin per share quicker than 77.9 0.9 days. And this isn't trading days. This is calendar days. So yeah, it's really cool. We'll see if we accelerate. But even if we can just stick to this line for a while, and you know, once you 10x your Bitcoin per share, then that takes if the current MNAV is 5, then the future MNAV after 10xing your Bitcoin per share for the same price without Bitcoin price changing, sorry, that's a long sentence, is a 0.5 MNAV. So the future MNAV, once a lot of this yield gets baked in, it just keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. You know, that price keeps going up, but relative to today's price looks cheaper and cheaper looking at the future.
Forward MNAV, like almost like Chris likes to talk about that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. I love this chart, man. Once you showed it to me, I think I saw it first. I was like, this isn't happening. Or this is happening. You know, the office meme, like when Michael panics, oh my God, this is happening. Yeah, it's happening right now.
Yeah, so first, because I think the chart after this, I'll show Metaplanet's growth compared to numbers like 2 through 6, I guess now. I have to remember because things change all the time. But yeah, so right now Metaplanet is number 7 in the public company leaderboard, like we talked about earlier. And just to, Strategy is on another level. I mean, they have about 50 times. They're at 2%, so about 50 times the Bitcoin that Metaplanet does. But they used to have 100 times as much Bitcoin as Metaplanet. They used to have 1,000 times as much Bitcoin as Metaplanet, and now it's 50. And of course, the inverse of that is this 2% that you see here is looking at it from Metaplanet's perspective. How much do we have compared to the big dog Strategy, right? So, I mean, this just keeps growing, and it's the furthest that it's been on a linear chart. It's the furthest that it's been away from that exponential trend line. So yeah, we're at almost 2.1% of MicroStrategy's Bitcoin holdings. And the question is, does that stabilize at some point? Do we hit 10% and then it stabilizes, or do we hit 50% or 75% or what? And I haven't really gotten a good answer from critics. It's just, I'm not saying that Metaplanet is extremely likely to have more Bitcoin than Strategy in the future. I think that that's much less than a 50% chance outcome. It's not zero. The regional advantages that Metaplanet has in Japan could propel it forward, given enough years. There's still a lot of Bitcoin trading, in the low 6 figures. The world still hasn't realized how valuable Bitcoin is. And so it's easy for these companies to gobble up Bitcoin and to sort of climb the ladder. So yeah, they're at 2.1% now, and that trajectory is insane. I think that this chart goes to the end of this year and puts it at 6% if they were to stay with that exponential, but we've already rocketed off that. So I expect us to hit at least, let's say, 10% this year. But yeah, we'll see.
Keep our eyes peeled for that for 10%. That'll be nice. We just got a good morning planet from Simon. Something's coming in tonight. Okay, breaking news. How do we do that? Breaking news. Breaking news.
That's cool.
Good morning planet from Simon. Something's coming tonight. Okay, you heard it here first. Just wanted to take that. Okay. Thank you for that, man. That was awesome. I love these charts, by the way. Like the fact that you keep those and update those, plus the new color scheme, I think is very, very appealing. Very nice. Let us know, folks, in the comments too on the Discord, like, or on X, like if you like these charts. Are they not good? Did you want to see different colors? Should we use like a pink color or whatever? Just let us know. We like the feedback, so we like to engage with the community. And finally, I love that you keep track of this statistics too, because nobody else does this.
Yeah, so this is, we gave Strategy its own chart, Metaplanet versus Strategy in the percentage there. And then this is the same thing, except the Y chart, or the Y axis is base 2. So log base 2. So this is looking at everyone else that's between them and Strategy. That's between Metaplanet and Strategy that holds more Bitcoin than Metaplanet does today. And whether it's Mara, who holds about 50,000 Bitcoin, or like Galaxy, which holds what, 12,000 something, or CleanSpark, which holds 12,000
Yep.
something as well. Those two that are almost at 100% are about to be deleted. The purple and the light blue stepping lines are about to be deleted from this chart because Metaplanet, either tonight or next week or something, sometime very soon, Metaplanet will cross over the 6th and 5th position, and Metaplanet will be the 5th position.
Yeah.
So soon this will be a lot cleaner chart, and maybe I'll figure out how to get strategy on here without it looking too awkward. But yeah, this shows us essentially with a trajectory to number 2 by the end of the year. I mean, we'll see what XXI does once they really start going, but I think they have some disadvantages. I think we talked about that a little bit in episode 2, maybe. But yeah, we'll keep going with this, and this projects us to be a number 2 at the end of this year. I think Christina is probably going to win her bet against British Hodl, which went something like that. Is it going to happen by the end of the year? Them hit 2% or number 2. So, but either way, we'll see how it goes. I'm very eager to see if we kind of stay between these bands that I've drawn there. But yeah, it's exciting.
I don't know if he'll pay out, man. I'm trying to get in on that bet too, but I don't think he'll pay out.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wonder with online bets. I'll probably never bet anyone anything online because you have to not only trust that you're right, but also trust that the other person's going to pay.
But yeah, if we had to take a bet, obviously, from if it wasn't clear enough from all this presentation that Climate and I do, you know that we take that bet willingly. I took it too, but I don't know if it's going to happen. But yes, bet or no bets. That's where our money is. Our mouth is and money is. Okay, I think. Let me see if there's any questions from the audience here. Anything pinned? Let me see. Just like convertible bonds, do you think scheduled Evo shorts will keep attracting more shorts and keep the stock suppressed? Bitcoin. Pikachu is asking. Just like convertible bonds, I'm assuming we're talking about strategy and other stocks. Okay, do you think scheduled Evo shorts will keep attracting more shorts and keep the stock suppressed? I think less, because with the convertible bonds, you attract a bunch of arbors and who are short the stock, like like half the nominal value of the stock just to stay delta hedged. But on top of that, you also have the regular shorts like Chanos and them they're not running the convertible bonds. Like, they didn't buy the convertible bond, right? He's not, but he's just straight up shorting the stock. The fact that there's no convertible bond on Metaplanet, apparently from listening to Simon and Dylan talk, is they like that. So no, I don't think the Evo shorts will keep the stock more suppressed. Now the new warrant too. Good morning. The new warrant is also very interesting in its design, because you have 3 days. So let's say the stock tanks for like 3 days and you get a new average and it's nice and low. And then if the stock continues tanking and spot is below the strike, Evo will not be shorting. And then if you're not Evo, if you're Citigroup and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, should I open the short, knowing that Evo could be in there, like could be waiting for like a shoot up and then be shorting again, and then exercising to close their shorts and then create like the Evo has also some impact on the stock. Whenever they conduct their operations, they try to be silent and minimize their impact. But it's almost like if they wanted to, I think Evo could weaponize itself against like the shorts a little bit, just to trap some shorts. Maybe they've done that, but I don't think the Evo shorts are anything to be worried about. I think the FUD created by the Evo shorts FUD that's going around is actually worse. Like, we saw this influencer in Japan, just with a large follower account, like, start pushing narratives. If we don't know, like, if it's something that's, does somebody have a short position and is just like, advertising them through that, or did the stock pop up on their radar because it's been up so much and now they're like, oh, it's overvalued, let's short it down. But if anything, I think the FUD that has more of an impact than the Evo shorts. Evo is going to do what they're going to do. Like, they were going to be there in the first place. You can't remove them. If you remove them, you have no ATM, synthetic ATM. If you have no synthetic ATM, you're not harvesting the spread. If you don't harvest the spread, then you're not running a Bitcoin flywheel. And if you don't run a Bitcoin flywheel, then what are we doing, right? So yeah, those are my thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on that, Climb?
Yeah, like just the CBs, a lot of what you said already. So yeah, the convertible bonds, like, I'm not an expert there, but it's risk free. Basically, they're sort of delta hedging. I think there might be some slight overnight exception to that statement, but for the most part, it's a risk free sort of thing. And yeah, we know where Evo is selling and where they're not, where they're able to and where they're not, let's say. And the shorts, like we talked about earlier, are almost certainly largely underwater. Even a lot of the recent shorts that have shorted over the last month, because I mean, a month ago we weren't, quite at these levels. So I think a lot of the shorts that have established their position over the last month might be short around the $9 point, and they probably wouldn't want to seriously cover their position unless we dropped substantially below that. But the alternative of that is that's all future buying pressure. They've already sold those. They can't keep adding to their short positions, or they can try, but then the squeeze, like, if the market realizes, if they double their short position from here to where instead of like 80 million shares short, it was like 240, if they could even borrow that many shares in the first place, what would that look like? Because the market knows that number. The market would see that. And how do you think the market would respond? So like, that would be really, really cool actually to see. But I'm happy that they are short, because if they weren't, then they could short. But they're already very heavily shorted. So yeah, can they up their shorts some?
Yeah.
Sure. But like, they've already done a lot of the damage, and they're already upside down. I think just about all of those names on that chart earlier are probably upside down on their shorts.
My thesis on that is like, let management cook, like let Metaplanet management cook. And if you have a long enough term time horizon, then you're okay. Like, you're not trying to, for the people day trading the stock in and out, then I guess it's a different thing. Like, people trying to buy the dip and sell sell the rip, buy the dip, then it's a different thing. But we're not there. Like, you just can hold this and outlast the shorts. You'll outlast them. Like, if you're as a holder, you're not paying any interest to hold anything like that. Like, as a holder, like, you can outlast your shorts by just hodling on the long enough time horizon. They'll have to close their shorts like one day or another. That's a given. They have to, because they're bleeding interest otherwise, like all the time. Yeah. So just like, yeah, just buy, hold, and sleep, right? And then that's how I think that's how I think about it. I don't even the shorts. You need all of that. You need shorts. You need longs to create a market. It takes two sides, bulls and bears, to make a market. If everybody's long only, then none of this would be possible either, right? Evo has you short to collect a spread. So, okay. Next question. I think Christina made a comment. She said, you are not considered a holder of record if you have lent your shares short. If you want to vote, so you need to call your shares back. I think you just lost a bunch of voting rights, Climb, if you were if those shares were lent out on AK Interactive Brokers.
Yeah, only about 10% of my shares are over there being lent out, but that is interesting. I didn't know that.
Good. Thank you for that, Christina. She's always awesome with this. How soon could they be offering prefers to the Japanese market? So, speculation earlier, we talked about that. Maybe, Doug, maybe next year, like full. But somebody put a thread actually there where it takes, they probably would have to acquire a bank and go through like a 12, 15 months process. And, so maybe a year or two, maybe the decision may be made sooner, but it will take like some pounding the pavement to make that happen. Any thoughts on that, Climb?
Yeah, I haven't heard about the bank necessity there, but yeah, we'll do more research. But yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards September, and then for the announcement and the vote, and then what I've sort of heard is that it may be a few months after that before they can do it with some other hurdles they have.
Okay, great. All right. Well, don't leave yet. We have another clip to show you, everybody. It's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds long, so stick around to the end. But we want to thank everybody who came onto the stream, who's watching. Again, things as a community, I really want to thank the whole Dojo community. You know, shout outs to Madness out there too, like doing their thing on X. The whole Bitcoin space, strategy, Bitcoin treasury companies, like all of you doing your podcast and your holding your spaces, everything is great. You know, you're just bringing awareness and kind of spreading all kinds of good information. So, you know, there'd be no way that Climate Net would be able to cover multiple stocks like that. You know, I do have like I still have my strategy position substantial. I have some LBG. So like, you know, appreciate the work that everybody's doing in all these spaces. I think this is really good for Bitcoin as a whole. Second thing too, if you are not part of the dojo, just join the dojo. The link will be posted below in a little bit. Join the dojo X on X as well, and you know, come and have some fun, post some memes, post some arts, listen to music. You know, come debate with your people. We're always looking for new talent too. Like if you guys want to contribute in any way, whether that's like theme design or chart making or make some new fan art, whatever for the introductions, or even put the introductions together so I don't have to do them all the time, like please let us know in the comments or on the Discord. We'll take care of that. What else? Was there anything you wanted to say, Climb, before we end this?
No, just this has been awesome, and I'm looking forward to what we have to talk about over episode 4.
Yeah, whatever that may be. Be ready for the meme that comes out whenever we announce the next Bitcoin buys. We'll be ready for that. Yeah, I love it. I love doing this with Klein. Like we spend a lot more time. We don't just like get together for the studio here, for the podcast. Like we actually do talk a whole lot like offline, and you know, about all this stuff. So there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes is what I'm trying to say. And I'm very excited to do this with Climb. I couldn't ask for better. So this has been a really, really eye-opening and exciting experience, like for both of us. So all right, thank you everybody. Join the Discord, scan that barcode over here. I don't know if it works, but just scan that barcode. I'm gonna leave it on for like the next 30 seconds. Keep talking. We will show a clip now by Sailor that has somebody climbed up. Somebody scanned it. I guess it works. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we're testing this soon. Okay. We're going to be showing a clip by Sailor. It's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Everybody hang around. When that clip ends, we're going to end the stream. So there's no extra post-credit scene or whatever, you know, like that will be the end of it. So please stay in there. We're going to mute ourselves and play that clip. We'll see you next time. Don't worry. The dojo strikes again.
When Metaplanet was a hotel, they might be able to buy $1 million of Bitcoin a year. But when Metaplanet started issuing equity, it's able to issue $1 billion of equity in a year. Metaplanet's creating a future in Japan. The world is waking up to this. You see that hints you see an explosion, you know, in the shares of Metaplanet and Smarter Web and H100 and Blockchain Group, right? This is going to continue. These companies are going to catch fire everywhere in the world, in every capital market. Over the long term, Bitcoin on the balance sheet has proven to be extraordinarily popular, driving increase in liquidity of the Metaplanets, of the similars. Metaplanet goes from 10 million to $1 billion, and I was ready to declare victory. I thought, that's great, that's 100x. And then they surged to 8 billion. Let's give Metaplanet a hand. It's amazing. The Metaplanet people raise capital from the Japanese market. I couldn't sell into the Japanese market. They're not competing with me. They're orange pilling the Japanese investors. You know, Metaplanet was a $10 million company, and a few months ago it was a $1 billion company, and in the last week or two it's been flirting with a $4 or $5 billion company. Most successful stock in the stock market.
Start re-energizing a company and growing it is by digitally transforming your balance sheet. And the companies who've done it earliest are having extraordinary success. companies like Strategy, companies like Metaplanet.
Every Bitcoin treasury company is a motor on the network, right? Torquing the network, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so as they get bigger, they're going to get exponentially more powerful. Metaplanet is getting exponentially more powerful. Semler is getting exponentially more powerful. We are getting more powerful. The 11th way to wealth is through equity. It means share your opportunity with investors willing to share your risk. Metaplanet has done this. Metaplanet went from 10 million to a $5 billion market cap with the partnership of their equity investors. Without their equity investors, they're nothing.